Chicago. Where these individuals somehow think this is street racing and this is a corridor where you drive your car around incredibly fast. Not a high density area with lots of stoplights and stop signs where you'll come upon extreme amounts of stops to get from one place to another. They consider it a open road, no one around, high speed race course. So it's funny because everything in its time and place, right? The reason they call it a racetrack is that's where you go racing. Oh, that's right. They call it a racetrack because people race on the track. Do they call a street a racetrack? No, they do not. Do they call the highway a racetrack? No, they call a street, a highway. None of them are called racetracks or stunt tracks. But this is the thing. They think they're in Hollywood, where they're on set of a movie. And that is not true. And so, I don't understand. But Japan has it right. They lowered the street speed limit to 18 miles an hour. All you do is integrate stoplights that keep you moving, and in 18 minutes I can go 18 miles. And, you don't burn as much fuel. Do you know by lowering the speed limit from 25 now to 18, do you know how much less gas they're going to burn off? And that's going to make their air that much cleaner? That much cleaner. All these people driving around here, slamming the gas, flying around, slamming on the brakes, all that particulate matter flying in the atmosphere. And they live in their own shit. Aren't they as stupid as can be? I think so. They don't escape their evil. They suck it down. And then so do all their neighbors. And everybody is poisoning everybody. But they say, oh, I'm not guilty of poisoning. You're incredibly guilty of poisoning. You're doing it through brake dust and emissions. But also tire tread wear and many other things. So, wow, you are guilty. Truly, just because it's small, go into courts. What do they say about a little bit of poisoning? Is somebody guilty of a crime if they just poison you a little bit? And the courts will tell you they don't care if it's a little poisoning or a lot of poisoning. It's still poisoning. And so you're still guilty of a crime. And poisoning is a felony. So, I don't get it. So you are guilty. It's just no one charges you with the crime. They charge you with speeding. But if I charge you with poisoning, you would spend a long time in jail. And I'd rather charge you with poisoning than speeding. That would change the narrative because that's what you're doing. And then I wouldn't charge you with speeding. I would charge you with reckless driving. Why reckless driving? Because this is a high-density, populous area. And when you're going fast, you can't stop quick. And that makes your action reckless. Because in a high-density area, you have to stop quicker. And when you speed, it takes longer to stop. And you can't say, oh, they're improving braking systems and that. Still, at a lower speed, you stop faster no matter what. So, again, you're reckless driving because you didn't stop as fast as you should have. And then any incident, because you're going faster than you should have, you created more damage than you should have. Truly. But the insurance companies don't do anything about it. They don't penalize you for the rate of damage because when the police come in an accident, they don't do a reconstruction like they did in Deerfield when the kid hit the tree and he died, and I think multiple people died, but they spent all day reconstructing. I think it was a couple days. And what were they doing? Since the occupants were all dead, they wanted to know how fast the kid was going. So what did they do? They got the exact same car. Truly, as far as they knew, matching the car. And then they had a professional driver come in and race the car. And all you heard all day is, and then, and what the professional driver was doing, he wanted to see when the car lost its handling. So how fast did he have to be going for him to lose the control of the vehicle, where it couldn't make the turn because the street moved right? So the street was straight and then it bent to the right, and not a turn per se, but the street just shrank and it moved more right. And so when you're going fast and then you got to make a slight pivot, but at high speed, that pivot is very difficult. And so they found out that what speed he was doing. And it was a side street, 25 miles an hour. I don't know, 60, 80, 100 miles an hour. He was blowing the speed limit numerous times. Because, you know, dead people don't talk. They could have and this is another thing, reinflate the crumple zones. Truly. So go into the Crash Institute and when they crashed the car, they measured the crumple zones. And so that means at different speeds as the Crash Institute hits it. And now the thing is, what type of barrier did they use? Because the transfer of energy, if you hit a solid barrier, which they do, well, then all the energy gets transferred to you. And so the testing is the worst case scenario. So the crumple zones are going to be more extreme in the testing. But that's good. You're testing for the worst case. But you have to test for when the other object gives some or absorbs some energy, like a tree they hit. It absorbs some energy. Or like a post that you'll hit and could crush the car, but if the post snaps and goes down, not all the energy is transferred back to you. So you have to do a depth of testing to see how this. And so they can do what I did at Suncast, is take the crumple zones of the individual metal itself and test it. I had to crush it. So I had to crush the plastic, put it under several different types of crushing scenarios. I was the quality controlled supervisor, and so I had to apply engineering to crush it, to crumple the material or snap the material. And so I measured the white, yes. So I measured the stress points of the material and everything. And that's where I talked to the plant manufacturer about the injection molding and about particle makeup and particle density and what we do with our scraps and regrind them and how much virgin to recycled material can be mixed to maintain certain structural integrity standards. And he had to work with me because everything he did, if I denied it, he would have to scrap it. And he was an older white guy, and I used to walk with him literally every night and go over all the machines, the molds, the injection, the heat, you name it. And he was there with them for 30 or 40 years, running their injection molding plants. So he knew all the machines inside out, the material and everything else. He was their night foreman. So I would walk with him and we would talk, and he had no problem. I was younger than him, in my early 20s, or yeah, I think like there. It's before Baja, so I was younger than 20, I think. But he had no problem with me because I wasn't an asshole. I seek to understand and made sure that my decisions were precise. My direct boss was an Asian female who I actually really liked, and her direct boss was a white male. And the three of us ran the quality controlled. And I learned a ton from him. But the reason he was willing to share is because I'm non-abrasive. I'm there trying to perfect the product, and so is he. Because his job is all about perfecting the product, putting out the best product he could put out. And so basically we would go through each of the machines and the injection scenarios and the material grades and so on, and that's where I dealt with resins. Lots of plastic resins. So 3D printing, that's injection molding. So if somebody thinks 3D printing is some new phenomenon, it is simply injection molding. Whether they're turning metal into a resin, creating a metal resin, and then heating it, and then printing it, ejecting it, that's all 3D printing is. So if somebody thinks this is some technology that's oh wow, this is such a leap and it's so amazing and everybody's talking about 3D printing, it's simply injection molding. So again, it does it without the mold, because the nozzle head is so small and so precise, it does it. And that's how I watched, and I was at the facility and went through injection molding, 3D printing. And what were they doing it for? Crowns. 3D printing of crowns. And what did they do? They took an image from the dentist of the mouth, and they re-imaged the crown so it would fit perfectly. And they showed me everything they were doing and how it was done and the resins they used and the heating points and you name it. They went through in incredible detail. So when I talk about all this, whether it's planetary science or blood technology or anything else, I spent a lot of time not only studying, but seeing the rubber hit the road. So my shit is through blood, sweat, and fucking tears. My intellectual property is fucking enormous. I am not some wet behind the ear motherfucker. All those years in Children's Hospital, I pay a lot of attention. And I learn. And so, again, you're not dealing with some jackass. And this is why I say that everybody has a voice. And when I say, no, you don't have a voice, you do. It's how you express it. Because Jen knew. She made cards and she sat there silently, or other people get up their instrument and play their violin, or they write in their diary. But again, so Asians aren't quiet. You think Asians, and they're so silent and everything else, and no. They just know that you don't have to talk to express yourself. What do you think martial arts is? It is a silent expression of motion. And how you do the motion expresses how you're feeling. It is a dance. It is a choreography. So if you think choreography is something new, dance, the Asians have been doing it in martial arts forever. Katas, or forms, are choreographed dances. And so I spent a lot of time in choreography since I was a child in martial arts. So when I look at dance or anything, I understand dance better than a ballerina. And I practiced it my whole life. So again, when people make these statements that what I say doesn't have incredible value, who the fuck are you lying to? I am not like you lame-ass motherfuckers that get on some quiz show and have some answer. Or like you're on Jeopardy, wow. But you really don't know shit. You haven't been there while Michelangelo makes the painting, have you? But I've been with the masters watching them create. And so there's a big difference in your source of information. So, truly. So when somebody says something, did they sit down and been doing engineering and mechanics their whole life? Because I sure have. From electrical fields from my racetrack, which was electrified, and my cars were electrified. And yes, they had magnets and the transfer of energy and the slot on the track. And I took it all apart. From my train to my model plane with my 2-stroke engine. And the thing that sucked is because there was no governor, which you can put a governor on the engine of your model plane that regulates how fast the plane is going. Now it's drone technology. But I also revved up the propeller and it was actually safe. Now, I wouldn't recommend what I did, but I revved up the propeller. I felt it. The plastic was soft and everything. And then I let it go at high speed and I stuck my finger in there. Now, it did hurt, but it didn't cut my finger. I'm like, oh, the propeller's safe. Still, it hurt. Not immensely, but it did hurt. But it was safe for a little kid. I wanted to see if it was safe. I could have used something instead of my finger, which would have been much smarter. But I wanted to see if it would create damage, if it would cut my finger in that. And it didn't. And I did love the 2-stroke model plane. And that thing was awesome. But that's my first with 2-stroke engines mixing oil and gas. And then watching the emission of the engine. I love popular mechanics. But this is what children are supposed to be doing. And I was all by myself. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I went through processes. And the funny thing is, and this is why, another reason why me and Jennifer were so compatible, because she grew up like me. She was the oldest, so she didn't have anyone in that way. And her mother and father were busy. And so she spent a lot of time initially with herself as a child, and she was a self-starter. And she figured everything out herself. So she was big on figuring it out. And so when she told me, I think one time, she's like, figure it out for yourself. I'm like, that's what I did. I'm like, okay. She didn't offend me. I'm like, oh, so you're like me. I figured it out. But the whole point is, and then I spent all this time, I worked on my four-wheeler, and I learned suspensions, adjusting there's basically tie rods and everything else that has a screw that you can adjust. It's like on the spokes of a wheel. They have that the spoke is threaded, and it goes into a screw, but the screw is rectangular. It is. It's long, elongated. It's thin. It's a thin rectangle, the screw. And so you twist it to either tighten or loosen it, the tension on the rim. And then depending on the tension of the rim, depends on how the rim handles shock, where the shock is absorbed by the wind or transferred by the rim, and it transfers it into the spokes. So you start understanding energy transfer, and you start understanding how tension affects the stiffness. It takes out ductility, or if you loosen it, it adds in ductility. So if you tighten it up, it becomes more stiff. And if you loosen it up, it becomes more ductile. So how much you're going to take into the rim, or how much the rim is going to transfer to the spokes. So when you're looking at cars, tires, and inflation, that little bubble inside is how much that energy is going to be absorbed by that bubble. So air absorbs consistency, oxygen 21%, nitrogen 78%, hydrogen 78, 21, 99, nitrogen, hydrogen 1% maybe, something like that, whatever the ground air. But then you get the particles because the air is impure, so you get all those atmospheric particles in there. So there's all kinds of different things from plants and that are putting in all kinds of different compositions into the air. So when they give those numbers, they're not accurate. There's all kinds of particle composition in there that makes the aggregate number different. So, but the thing is, you start understanding. And I spend all day taking apart the gearing on my bike. I had multiple gearings, single gearings, and you take off and you understand the ball bearings and how to cut through the grease. I usually use gasoline to cut the oils. Gasoline is awesome at degreasing. Yes, it's flammable, but it does a great job. I have my can of gasoline, and then I drop my ball bearings in, and there's a circle. The ball bearings, the individual ball bearings snap into this bracket. Yes, metal bracket. And then I would drop it in. I didn't take out the individual ball bearings. I felt how they move with inside the bracket, how much friction or non-friction it had. And that's when I put the oil on and watched them spin at a different rate. When I spun them, when they were dirty, they didn't spin well. When I cleaned them and then re-lubricate them, they like really spin really well. The oil turned dark and got really black with soot in that. That was shavings from the metal. As the lubricant broke down and the ball bearings were still spinning, it deposited a lot of metal shavings, plus the viscosity of the material broke down, and so the oil changed colors with the metallic in that, and so it would get darker and heavier. And so as you do these things and change, you start learning. And then I changed a shitload of car oil. I flushed car systems, I changed oil, I changed tires, I rotated tires, I fixed flats, I worked in machine shops, all kinds of parts. I talked to all the people that worked in the different machines, the honing and whatever. And you're a sponge. I didn't ask a lot of questions. I took in a lot of information. So a lot of people ask questions. No, they would like to talk and share information, and I would listen. Tell me about your job. Sitting there in grinding or the CNC machines, and they would share what they did and how they did it. This is all learning. I never talked with my father. I just sat there silently and allowed him to mentor me. So many kids today, when you think, oh, the Bible is so evil, it says that children should be seen and not heard. How evil is that? They need a voice. They don't need a voice at all. That's why black people tend to be so ignorant. They're expressive, but they don't express their stuff in the right way. You can express it through mechanical. Go out there and exercise your demons by doing things mechanically. It's actually, the salt of the earth, farming, mechanical. And this is why black people used to be a lot in construction, in their trades, because mentality of expression, how you express yourself. Warriors, they like to work in demolition, and they like to work in construction. They like to create things and destroy things. And so those fields of creation and destruction, which you do in carpentry and everything else, because you got to destroy something to create something. You got to cut the wood, that's destroying it. And then when you put it together with something else, that's creating it. And so it was things that allow them to express themselves. So you have to understand when they say high emotional intelligence. Well, if you're going to make that emotional intelligence pay off for you, you have to get into using it in the right way, the right form of making those emotions come into the physical state. So you're taking it from a mental state, a chemical, electrical state, into a physical state. It's a transference, yes. And so if they understand that, then you can channel your energy and become the best you can be. And so some people master that, like Bruce Lee is an example, or you would say Jordan. Truly, he wasn't a very emotional player in that way. Very intense, but not expressive. You didn't see him slamming the ball and so on and so forth. He'd take the energy and figure out, like when he went against Craig Elo for Cleveland, literally, it was great. Craig Elo, I think, was taller than him, but again, he had to figure out how to beat him. And he had a fadeaway jump shot that Craig couldn't block. So Craig could go up more vertical because he had, I think, a few inches on him. Maybe he was 6'9" like Magic. I forget the difference. But he had some type of physical advantage over Jordan. So Jordan used the fadeaway. He developed that fadeaway. He didn't have that fadeaway before. He developed it. It was something that to prevent people from blocking his shot. Because when you get into NBA, people can jump. And so you develop things to offset their vertical. And one thing, fading away because they're jumping straight up vertical, and if you move back a little bit, you can arc it over their vertical. You can go over the top. So the shots have more arc to it. If you look at Jordan's and you display his fadeaway, it has a big arc. And it was designed that way so they can't block it. So it makes it very unstoppable. And he won games. I still remember winning shots. And he loved taking the game-winning shot. But also, he didn't always take the game-winning shot. Sometimes he played the decoy. He wasn't a selfish player. He made points out of necessity, not out of hogging the ball. And that made him good because he was good at distributing. So, and I've hung out with him multiple times, Scottsdale here in Chicago, but he's laid back. And so he doesn't, he just sits back and he relaxes, de-stresses. Truly, because he's just really de-stressed, really relaxed, because he's going out for leisure. He's not in the game. So he had good balance between, being highly competitive like me. I'm super competitive, but also I like to relax, like let back and be peaceful. And he would hang out and he would relax and let back and kick back, and he didn't talk much, and he just lay back and take in an environment and that. But it's a good way to de-stress. And he didn't worry about, he had his driver, like I told you, who used to pay his bill, who was basically great friends with him. He was a white guy, and he was his driver, and they became great friends because he did him a solid when he first came into Chicago. And I guess everybody knows the story, but he came in to Chicago to meet with the Bulls, and they were supposed to pick him up at the airport, and I don't know exactly what happened, but Jordan, he came in, they're supposed to pick up everything, and, he's coming from college, and he doesn't have money. He went to North Carolina. North Carolina didn't pay for him. So he went there because of Dean Smith. He wanted to be mentored by the best. He made a smart move by going to North Carolina and getting mentored by Dean Smith. But Michael should talk about his mentoring under Dean Smith and his coaching philosophy. Dean Smith made he made Coach K from Duke, Krzyzewski, so many other great coaches. And Michael has all that experience. It's like the guy that wrote the book with John Warden at UCLA. John Wooden, my bad. But anyways, I met him, Andy, and me and him talked multiple times. I've been at multiple events with him and hang out, and then basically we became friends. And he wrote the book on Wooden about him and his relationship and what he learned. He wasn't a starter. He was a bench guy. But him and Wooden had a great relationship, and he learned, and it wasn't just during, they were friends afterwards. And so he stayed in close contact with Wooden. And so he wrote a book about their relationship. I have a signed copy. Actually, I think I have 2 signed copies, but I don't know where they are. He signed at one event for me, and then he signed at another. It's like the guy with Survivor who created it, who was the ex-nanny, who was in Britain, who was basically their form of a Navy SEAL or something. Truly, he was a Navy SEAL. I forget what he was in Britain, they call it exactly, but it's kind of their form of Special Forces, SAS. And I talked to him, I met him at Y-Bar when he did a book reading. So I was there at book readings, and then afterwards, I ended up having a long conversation with him, and he signed the book for me. And it was a great talk. So I have Economist I sat on the plane with next to Jen, and he wrote a book on economics, and I read his book from cover to cover. And he didn't have it on him, so he didn't sign it, but he's best friends with the guy that owns, what's it called in Vernon Hills, the company. But anyways, he's best friends, and he recommended a restaurant in Chicago that I took Jen to for breakfast, and it has donut holes and everything. But I didn't do a lot of the talking. I just asked strategic questions. That's what a good reporter would do. But again, and they did all the talking. And it was kind of cool. And then he went on. He had the book first before he created Survivor. And then he went on and created Survivor. And that character, okay, he made the show, and I did watch Survivor, that season with Richard, the gay guy, the white guy in that. But the thing, he stole it because he was willing to go naked. That's his thing. He was charismatic in that. He was likable. But the thing is, they didn't show it. They had to blank him out. But the other characters weren't willing to do that. And he did it, and he made a big name for himself. But also, I thought it was kind of unfair, because he was stealing it not through him being incredible at survivor skills, because remember, this is an SAS officer, a Navy SEAL. The whole point was about having these immense survivor skills and being able to negotiate with your team and get them to do the right thing to make things happen. He won because he went naked and had more charisma. So I thought he cheated, and I fucking hated him. Where the other characters, they were playing within the rules, trying to accomplish things, and he made it because he was more flamboyant, willing to do it naked. So I thought that was kind of unfair. And so I've never liked him. The whole point was, and the origin of the show, and I would watch it if it really did have survivor skills. Like you had to navigate and tell poison ivy from poison berries to truly, then it has a great value. I'm not looking at it from a theatrical value. I'm looking at it's survivor. And if I get lost in the fucking wild, I want the intellectual properties, and that's why I watched it this first season. But after that, It was more about theatrics than it was about Survivor. And I can watch a lot of other scripted shows, like Citadel and everything else, and that's not Survivor. But it's really well done. But I want to see them out there making decisions and suffering. You get on the show, you sign up for your ass to be on the line. One thing I can, like WWE and that, the one thing is, they really do hit the floor. And you have to do it strategically right. But make no mistake about it, even when you're faking it and you're throwing people in martial arts, and we throw people, and it has padding, but make no mistake about it, you really feel yourself hitting the mat, because you're really hitting the fucking mat. So doing martial arts and throwing people and everything, and doing the twisting and everything we else do, oh yeah, you feel it. And this is where there was a reporter who went to a wrestling star, and this was way back towards the beginning. And the reporter made a smart-ass statement about how everything is fake. It is scripted, and it is fake that way. The reporter made the mistake of telling him everything is fake. Not that it is scripted. And so the outcome is already set, pre-scripted. But he made the decision that all the things are fake, and, you know, the tosses and that. And so there is no, like, physical pain you feel or anything else. And he got pissed, and he gave him a slap to the side of the head, because, you know, the hand slap. And he said, "So is that fake?" And it wasn't, and it popped his eardrum. And so he had to settle his suit. But the whole point of it, I can understand his frustration. You don't think this takes a lot of physical endurance? You don't think I take a beating? You're sadly mistaken. Yes, this is a scripted sport, but there is punishment. It does take a physical toll, even with mats and everything else. As you learn with gymnastics and that, they do it. It still takes a physical toll on the body. Even with those pads and that, you flip and you miss and you fall. It still hurts. So, yes, it's scripted, but no. And so it's not as easy as it looks. And so people don't realize that it does take a toll on the body. And you have to take care of yourself, or it can end up bad. And a lot of those old wrestlers didn't take care of themselves correctly, like the old football players like Dick on that. And they didn't take care of themselves correctly, and they ended up having serious issues later in life. Because the point is, when you damage yourself, like in the gym, and this is why people don't understand working out. Do you know working out breaks down the muscles? It destroys the fiber. Exercise. And the more intensely you do it, the more intensely you damage the body. So when you're doing those curls and you say, "I'm building my muscle," no, you're tearing down the muscle fiber. You're actually destroying it. And what you're doing to build it, and this is why bodybuilders and others, sleep and recovery, what they take before they go to bed, is incredibly important, because they know. And so if you've ever known bodybuilders, and I've known, they're fucking insane about getting incredibly good sleep. Because the best bodybuilders like Arnold, and if you ever talk to him, sleep is one of the most important things you can do. What you do before sleep, the food, and then when you sleep, because that's when the tissues repair. And if you don't get the proper rest, the deep sleep and everything you need to repair the tissues, and you go out the next day, you just tear them down further. They've never built back up. They never repaired themselves, and you end up damaging yourself. You damage yourself. And that's what the military doesn't understand. So you need to be able to have this sense of peace. And this is why this ringing in my ear is so fucking deadly. You have to have this peace. The brain wants to relax. They know external sounds, and the external sound the brain can turn off. An internal sound, it's very hard, and that's why mental illness is so unbelievably damaging, because it's the internal sound, and the internal sound is impossible for the brain to turn off. So I talk about vibration, and your brain experiencing vibration. And to get proper deep sleep, you have to back out the vibration. And you have to allow the tissue to regenerate. So that's why moving out, if you know the fibers and that, look up vibration and what it does to material, especially human flesh. So there's agitation that's necessary, but when you're sleeping in that, in deep sleep, you want the tissue to become incredibly still, vibrational free. So that's the incredible penalty that comes with mental health. And that's why the brain builds up plaque and everything. Oh yeah, mental health issues, the brain, if it continues, the brain builds up plaque. Because the brain wants to rest and relax, and the cells, when they can't get it, they have to do something. And so amyloid plaque in that. And that's why you don't understand. And I studied sleep for a long time, in dreams and thought. Kant, he's a German philosopher, and he's all about thought. But I studied and read on thought, how the subconscious and conscious work, how they integrate and how it transitions, and you name it. And I use that to clarify my frustration, knowing inside and outside and what is and what shouldn't be. And I spent even an immense more time during my first breakdown of delineating between exterior and interior thoughts. And I would go into ultra quiet rooms. Truly, I started at Jen. If she would have just let me finish the process, I was getting there. I'm hyper analytical, and all she had to do is believe in me. And I was trying to figure it out by isolating. So I would put myself in different environments and just listen to myself. And trying to figure out exterior and interior thoughts. What is and what shouldn't be, and so on. And I spent years and years, but I spent my whole life starting to analyze as a kid my dreams. I used to dream about flying over Chicago. And it was an awesome dream. I was like Superman, and I would drift over the whole city, fly above the Hancock and Sears Tower, and I would just look over the city like my soul. And it was awesome. That was an awesome dream. And then, yes, the falling dream, but when I had it, I actually was falling out of my bunk bed. So when I was dreaming of falling, I actually was falling. And when I hit the ground and woke up, I'm like, well, that wasn't a dream. I was really falling through the air. I was in a bunk bed, and I took off the rail. I put it back on. But that's why they put the rail, so you don't roll off the bed. So that was a great invention. But I fell on the floor, on my back, and no, I didn't get hurt. But it did startle me. And it wasn't a wooden or hard floor. I think we had carpeting, and there was a little bit of pad. But that's where sometimes I understand sleepwalking, where dreams can be reality. And that's what sleepwalking is. When you think you're dreaming and you're in that dream state, but you're actually doing. It's not a dream. But I also understand when they say the guy killed the woman. Well, I also understood dreaming of falling, and when I hit the floor, I woke up. And so, unless you're on some type of medication, seriously, if you're under some form of narcotic that doesn't allow you to wake up, to open up the prefrontal cortex and that, then it inhibits. Then if you're not on an immense inhibitor, you can be on an immense inhibitor and sleepwalk and then do something very violent and not know it. That's possible, but you'd have to show me that you're on some type of extreme suppressant, or you had some kind of extreme cognitive injury where it was very hard for you to be lucid, aware, then I could see that. But when that guy with the court case said he was sleepwalking and he doesn't have cognitive issues and he wasn't taking medication, then that's a bunch of fucking bullshit. Because I also was drunk once and pissed while I was sleepwalking. And when I got startled by my roommate calling out to me, I woke up and I'm like, what the fuck? So he's like, Mike, what are you doing? I'm like, oh shit. But I was dreaming. But again, I woke up right away. So when I watched that trial, I was dreaming and sleepwalking, and I didn't know, and I stabbed her all these times, and I put the body in the pool, and then I was all wet, and then I changed my clothes, and then I went back to bed, and I had no idea that I did it. And I woke up, and there was my wife floating in the pool in blood. That's not true. That's a bunch of fucking bullshit. But nice try, but that doesn't add up. But you actually have had to have sleepwalking yourself and experience these things. Because if you don't, then you can't call bullshit. But once you go through the experiences a few times, and I haven't sleptwalked many times, but that once, surely that was the only time I had sleepwalking. But I did sleepwalk. And again, the falling dream. So you realize it knocks you out of your sleep, getting startled. Oh, and squeezing Jen's head. Here, I'll give you another one. Jen used to sleep in my arm. And one dream I was having was I was squishing a apple or something. And I was truly moving my arm in that motion. And I was squeezing her head. And it woke her up, and she's like, Mike. I'm like, what? And she went right back to sleep in my arm. But I was squeezing her head with my arm. That never happened again. And she trusted me and went right back to sleep in my arm. But right away, when she said something to me, her live voice startled me, and I woke right up, and I stopped, and I said, I'm sorry, I was dreaming. And I was dreaming. So I can understand that, but once somebody cries out, even when I was closing my arm, I didn't feel her because I thought it was a dream. So it disassociated from the movement. So I can understand if he said, okay, I woke up and then, I was dreaming and I stuck the knife in, and then she screamed. Okay. But not what he did several times in and out with her supposedly screaming and trying to protect herself. So again, there is just no way, unless somehow he was heavily sedated. So again, there's a big difference between fantasy and reality. And your body knows the difference. And the deadly thing is, as I put out there on Tumblr and that, when you mix fantasy with reality, it is incredibly deadly. It is horrible for your psyche. So your body has to know what's external and what's internal. And if it doesn't, it can cause incredible mental illness. It really fucks with the brain massively. Why do you think we have ears? So when people say things, and they really say them, and they whisper them, that's why we don't allow subliminal advertising. You can do it by breaking out the popcorn, and they smell it, and it triggers. That's okay. They smell it, and then they decide, well, am I hungry? Do I want some popcorn? Okay. But when you do it through deception, like they say in the Bible, they talk about the, demonic whispers. These are external whispers. They're subliminal, basically. They're these little voices that you get in your head, but they're not in your head. They're external. And they're manipulating you. And those are demonic voices. So we say that is illegal. And if you're doing that, you're a great threat. And I should be able to knock the fucking shit out of you. Because if you're doing that, you're about as evil as can be. You're trying to manipulate a situation or a person and acting like you're not doing it, but you are doing it. And that makes it incredibly horrible. So there's a big difference between internal and external. And I put it out there on Tumblr, all the research. And if it's not truly them, and it's not truly internal, then you're rewiring the brain, and you're going to create a psychotic break. And that is incredibly deadly. So that's why we say when you act, it's on stage. And when you come off a stage, you become a scam artist. So we say we don't mix fantasy and reality, so there is a clear delineation. So if you really hit that fucking person and I see you, that is not on the stage. You really hit them. It is not fucking acting. Because if not, then you're screwing with somebody. And, oh yeah, that's right, Prank, the TV show with Austin Kutcher. But they tell you immediately it wasn't real. But I've seen these things go awry. So you have to be very careful when you do something like that. But Pranked is a TV show. But again, those people can sue them. You know that, right? You know they can sue them. So when you're doing that, you're liable. Because it's reality. And they can sue you. They can criminally charge, like the Jerky Boys, they can be criminally charged for prank calling. On the backside, they called them back and everything and got permission. But again, you're taking a risk, and if something goes awry from that, you're fucked. Because they might not be the one that says, oh, I'll sign off on this. That's why we have stuntmen in that. And that's why they do stunt scenes in a movie. And if you say it's reality TV, then they're pre-signing off on these things. And you're covering what's acceptable and not acceptable. And if these occurrences occur on reality TV, like Survivor, like if you get poison ivy, or you get actually poisoned by eating a berry, or you break a leg, or whatever it may be, these are the risks. It's like going into the military. You sign off, and it's not wrongful death if you get killed. These are the risks of the job. And you accept those risks. And those risks, one of them is that you can be killed. So they have insurance and everything. But again, that's the risk of the position. And they do sign it off on it. I was going to go into the military, and I understood those things. And I had roommates that went in the military, and they understood they could be killed. And they sign off on that. So again, if they do the thing and you do everything within reason and they die, they can't sue you with wrongful death. That's why the military does extensive training, and they give you guns and hand grenades and other things and hand-to-hand combat, because they give you helmets and everything they possibly can to have you survive. So it's a calculated risk. But when you don't give somebody training and you do it to them, it is not a calculated risk. It is terrorism. So when somebody else has driving and they come flying up on you, and they might be a stunt driver or something, or a professional driver, well, my reaction is, I'm on the highway, and this is pedestrian driving. I'm not on a racing track. This is not a competitive sport. I'm not racing the guy next to me or the guy next, and I'm not revving my and who gets to the next light wins. That's street racing, and that's highly illegal. I'm just trying to get from point A to point B. I'm in my lane, they're in their lane. I go the speed limit. We're governed within a 10-mile radius. 20 is the minimum, 30 is the maximum. So, just like the Hispanic guy on the highway, what power struggle? I'm just going to get somewhere, and I'm on the highway, and you want to hurt me. I'm just trying to get from point A to point B legally. All these motherfuckers breaking the law is unbelievable. You've been breaking so many fucking laws with my life. It's unfucking believable. You took away my licenses illegally. And when you take and suspend me on Facebook, I'm not doing anything wrong. And I watch these people fuck out here express themselves in their colors and the LGBTQ. I'm like, you're taking me off of Facebook, and I go and I seen a gay parade before, and I've been in Boys Town, and the fucking shit their chat pantses where their ass is hanging out, their fucking penis. I actually drove up on one, and I'm like, and you're taking my shit off of Facebook saying it's against the fucking community? And I look at these motherfucking gay people and the fucking shit they do. It's unbelievable. And somehow that's against the fucking community? You gotta be fucking kidding me. Mark Zuckerberg is a piece of fucking living fucking filth. So you'll accept that, and you won't accept the truth. Wow. So somehow the truth is now illegal. So that means you made lying legal. And how fucked up of a world is that? When you turned something that was never supposed to be legal and should never be legal. And in the Bible, it says, only if you're going to be slaughtered, imminent threat of fucking death, are you allowed to lie. Outside of that, you're not. So if you walk up to me and lie to me about who you are, truly, if you're at Starbucks and you're a barista, okay. But if you lie to me about who the fuck you are in that, haven't we had enough of terrorism with counterfeit IDs and fraudulent passports and all that? And these people from hitmen, I mean, there are so many people who lied and slaughtered and raped and pillaged and everything because they were able to hide behind a false shield. Like we talk about shell companies and people hiding, laundering money for evil deeds and that, and hiding behind these things so they can't be prosecuted. And then somehow you want to fucking allow that? After all we've been through? Have you ever been to Arlington Cemetery? Not Arlington Heights. Arlington Cemetery? I have. And all those white stones for as far as the eye can see, and I just think of all the sacrifice, how many people died. And then watch Private Ryan on the beach where they get their flesh torn off, they lose their arms and legs, and truly get cut in half and cry out in pain and agony. And I think of all those people that died so we can have peace and tranquility and happiness. And I think of Jesus and the disciples on the cross and how much they suffered and how they were persecuted and everything else. And then I watch you somehow prize these people and they're fucking evil. So you encourage how these people like Jeffrey Dahmer. Do you know that what he did was a crime itself? The premeditation of committing murder is a crime. Premeditated murder is a crime. Just the act of contemplating killing somebody. So there's a big difference when you're flying up on me and threatening my life and you've tailgated me extremely, and I want you, as you put a gun to my head, which your car is literally like a gun, and you threaten my life with it, it doesn't matter I have a bulletproof vest per se, I'm in another car. If you shoot a cop in a bulletproof vest, is that not attempted murder? Just because the vest stopped the bullet, it doesn't mean it wasn't attempted murder. Now, was it premeditated? Did he go out and want to shoot the cop? Maybe not. Even with armed robbery, they weren't going out to shoot somebody. There's a difference between a serial killer. They go out. It's like, here, I'm getting somebody bribing me, get over. It's a one-lane street. And it's a side street. Why the fuck would I move over for you? You're not an emergency vehicle. So why the fuck would I yield to you? Why would I give up my priority place in line, which is ahead of you? So again, and you can't bully me, and I told you this with the airport model. And I told people when I let them, before I said yes, I said, understand this. I have extra time and I can let you go ahead of me. But if any of the people, and this was at Southwest, this was at O'Hare, Midway O'Hare. I've done this multiple times. And a couple times people said, oh, I'm running late. Can I go? And I said, before I let you go, remember this. If somebody in front of me says no, you must accept your place and your fate. And this is like the donor list. And you must accept your place and your fate. You can't illegally rig the system and buy an illegal organ. You have to accept the system. You can't have somebody out there killed and then get their organ in exchange to save your life. That is not how it works. And I explained to him in the baggage line, and I let him ahead, and I watched. One time, they went all the way through, and everybody gave them grace, and they got right to the front. And another time, they stopped, and that person accepted their fate. I have to wait. It is not my turn. So, I don't get it. And if you can't make it into the NBA, because they don't have to give up their place. Once they get in, it's theirs. And if they can't qualify anymore, then that place opens up. But if they're playing at 60, 70, 80 years old, and they're still earning that spot, fuck you. Go get another job. You don't belong. First come, first served. And if it doesn't get to you, like I tell people in line, then we don't get to you. That's your risk of standing in line. So again, you take a risk when you go into a profession, whether you're going to make the cut. Ask Tim Tebow. He got cut from football. He got cut from baseball. He had his chances. He didn't cut it. So you accept your fate. Truly. You're not good enough. So this is why, now you have the summer football league. Do I really want to spend time watching it? How much time do I want to dedicate to watching football? I like watching baseball in the summertime, basketball in the fall, hockey. How much time do I have to watch football? And then I do like watching soccer. These were all natural sports that were on. And then you have auto racing. Do I really want to watch another football league? So, again, they have to find their own viewership and people that want to watch. I like watching football in the fall, and when it's over, I like moving on to other sports. I like watching my baseball. And now this is why I'm pissed that the basketball season goes so far into the baseball season. I'm like, what the fuck? Truly. I don't want to watch basketball anymore. I want to start focusing on baseball. I was fine when basketball ended in April, basically beginning of the baseball season. The teams are just starting out. I'm not really into the season. Basketball ends up its finals, it's done. And then at the end of April, May, now I'm into baseball. But when they cross over and now they're playing in May, I really don't have that much fucking interest anymore. I like to be watching my baseball. Pigs get slaughtered. So again, if you want to, do what baseball does. It adds double headers. Oh, professional baseball players. I played double headers when I was at Horner Park and when I played for Deerfield. Truly, I played double headers. So I don't get it. Basketball can do double headers. So if you want to add another game, do you clear out the stadium? And we had breaks between. You clear out the stadium and new fans come in. Or they buy the second game. It isn't a 2-for-1. You got to pay for a second ticket. And that's what they should do in baseball. If not, you got to leave. Other people are coming in, you're exiting. There's an hour or two between the first game and second game. Maybe 2 hours. Athletes go rest. They can catch a power nap. Get hydrated, change their uniform, take a shower. Truly. Go in, get something to eat. Take a shower first and get out of that and all cleaned up, and then get something to eat, and then have time to rest, and then 2 hours later the nightcap starts. And you had to buy a second ticket. It's like when I go to the movies. I go in for the one showing and then I have to leave. And I have to buy a ticket to the next showing. So the theater has to empty out and you got to buy your next ticket. So again, basketball can do double headers. Hockey can do double headers. They've done it forever. I like baseball double headers. It's a way to pack in more games, and if there's a rain delay or something, They do a double header to make it up if the game was canceled, so they stay on track, and that's what double headers are for. But it also can be used just to add more games to the circuit. So you play an afternoon game and an evening game in the NBA. When fitness gets better and they regeneration drinks and everything else, well, why wouldn't you ask more from those fucking athletes? I need 2 games in one day. So you're going to play a day game and a night game. I'm paying you millions of fucking dollars. So I'll set a 2-hour between the end of the first game and the start of the second game. And you estimate in basketball, you know exactly when. In baseball, you don't, because it can go into extra innings. So you have a general reference of when it's going to start. That's why in hockey they have sudden death, meaning they have the shootout because after that extra period, the game's got to fucking end. So in baseball, they could do a sudden death thing where it's like a shootout or something instead of going 19 innings. I like that in hockey, the shootout, because after one overtime period, you don't want it. No, you go to the shootout. They do in soccer, I think, too, right? That way you know when it's going to end. So in baseball, they have to get that. So it gives a definite time range for an ending. So you'd have to figure that out. But even in football, they have ties. So again, you know by default how long the game could go for. So it allows TV stations and that knows that, okay, after this, the game goes as down as a tie. You see it in the NFL, and every so often you get one in the tie column. Very rare, but it does happen. Because it's not endless play. So eventually the game's got to end. If there's no winner, then it goes as a tie. But in the playoffs, you can't have ties. So somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. So you take that out. What do they do in high school football? If anyone's ever done that, they start the ball at the 20-yard line. In high school football, both teams get the ball at the 20-yard line for overtime. I've been in it. We actually lost to East St. Louis Lincoln in overtime because we should have won, but Brett Truckenbrow dropped the ball in the end zone, right in his arms. Nice pass. He played tight end, open, and he dropped the touchdown pass. I was like aghast. I'm like, that wasn't a difficult catch. There was another game we lost where Billy went around the trap block. He went outside of the trap block. I'm like, that's not a lot of intellect. Why would you go outside the block that was in a block the only person that could tackle you, and you went, instead of going behind the block, you went, and our coach kept on replaying it saying, How the fuck could you have done that? Explain your intuition here. The play is clear as day. So I remember this because I remember people's cognitive ability. And that's not a high-thinking individual. Because you would have never gone outside your block. You would have went behind the block and we would have won the game. So I think of people making shitloads of money, and I think of their capability to make that money. And then when there isn't, then something is kind of funny about how they accumulated that wealth. Because literally, they showed me they didn't have that ability mentally to be that person. So that tells me the money came from other means than your capability to self-generate. So I gauge people's ability. Truly, I've watched all these businesses and been in those that succeeded, those that have failed, and I judge their capability. Who has it and who doesn't? I made businesses lots of money because my judgment was way better than everybody else's. They failed because they went with the person they thought was making the needle move. That person wasn't making the needle move. It was me making the needle move. They weren't. That was their bad. Their incredible misjudgment. Their stupidity. And that's why all those places failed. Because those people, and the Bible warns you about false idols. And that means somebody's getting paid for something they don't deserve to be. They didn't earn it, and they're receiving money for something they do not fucking deserve. They're receiving prestige for something they never fucking did. I hate those motherfuckers. But do you know who hates those motherfuckers more? Jesus and God. And that's why Jesus judges the quick and the dead. Because he knows exactly what the fuck you did and what you didn't. And I've told people that there's a come to Jesus moment where all your puffing and all your bullshit no longer can save you. And so if you got the stardom and like you're Milli Vanilli, God knows who you are, and he doesn't consider those good works. He considers you did a fraud, and you never should have been that. And you stole somebody else's that belongs there. So there's a big difference. Those that belong and those that don't. And when we do things right in society, like the Fat Five, they should have never been at Michigan. They could have went to Howard. Truly. They didn't belong there. They can't get in. So they would have been at some other school. And that's what I appreciate with Northwestern. Either you're cutting the grade or you don't with their program. And if you're playing football, you deserve to be there. And you don't have to hold your head down because you deserve to be there as much as anyone else. And so they maintain that you have to have the academic paralysis to be there. And they don't water down their graduates. So when those people don't make it in football, go back through Northwestern's football graduates. When they don't make it in football, they make it somewhere else in life. And they do make it. Because they belong there. They stayed there through academic honesty. And just because football didn't happen, something else happened for them amazingly. And so when you don't allow people to be pretenders, when the shit hits the fan and they don't make it in football, they already have the skills they developed through their academics. And I know I was put on academic probation at Benedictine. I played college football, and I was put on academic probation. I got my grades up the second semester, but my first semester I had chemistry and everything else, and well, it wasn't really the courses that were the issue. It was taking on all the freaking problems that I was fighting, all these battles, and it was weighing on me and taking up so much of my time, unbelievably. Plus, I worked during the football season. Oh yeah, I worked. I had work study and I worked during the football season. I had to do the weight room and I worked. How many football players worked during their football season? I played college, and at Benedictine, we had 3-a-days. Some colleges had 2-a-days. Larry Cox, our coach, ran 3-a-days. And that was a bitch. Early morning, midday, and evening. And that was intense. My legs were so sore. And that's when walking upstairs was actually easier than walking downstairs. Extending my legs, they hurt. The practices were incredibly intense, and we had 3 of them in a single day. And no, it's not like Arizona with the immense heat. Still humidity, and it was warm. But Kansas, it was a little bit better. But still, 3 practices in a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, was very intense. And yes, I used to take a power nap. So we did have good spacing between practices, and I could get in. I loved my power nap. So get something to eat and take a nap. Because eating afterwards, at least it digested somewhat when I was sleeping. But it was nice to take the power nap. But I understand intensity. But either you're cutting it or you don't belong. Because somebody else needs to go there. So anyways, I gotta go home. But again, that's why I say you can't lower your standards to let somebody in. They gotta bust their fucking ass to earn their right. And so I don't go slumming. I don't consider myself low value. You might, I don't. And the funny thing is, what do you think predators do? You see yourself as low value. They see yourself as low value. So you set yourself up because, as the Bible says, you diminish your value, other people see you as that diminished value. So you seek excellence, you maintain your value. Whether you're sweeping floors or mopping or anything else, if you have pride in that, meaning doing it to the best of your ability, not falsehood, where you didn't do it and you claim you did, but you did it to the best of your ability, oh yeah, you can learn. And you find out, okay, what I did wasn't good enough. Okay. I used to tell my bosses that all the time. Let me know. If I can do it better, feel free to show me. I'll be happy to tweak my method. I told this to every girlfriend I had. If we ever break up, I want to know why we broke up and where I failed, because I don't want to lose. So I don't want to lose. So I went to the churches. I stayed in the Asian churches and tried to perfect my knowledge and understand more deeply culture and everything else, because I don't want to lose. Because I like deepening my relationships and deepening my friendships. I felt so cheated when my father died at 7. It was incredible. And I still feel cheated that my mother wasn't around now, because I was trying to rebuild the relationship and get to a point that I never had as a child. And I was hoping to come to that point where we could actually eventually, even if it was short term, an incredible mother-son relationship that what it should have been. Instead, in the second breakdown, she spent years telling me that you can't pay your bills. I'm trying to go out Uber and doing the best. You can't pay your bills. No one likes you. You're a mean person. What the fuck? I'm doing everything I can to overcome my shit, and you reversed everything and are doing psychological terror to me. You become the anti-fucking Christ. And I couldn't believe she fucking did this, because before 16, 15, 14, she realized that I was right. Carl was wrong. Ellen was wrong. And she finally, after Carl fucked me over out of my 401k money and that, again, he did all that with the bill. And then she finally realized that I was right, he was wrong, and we were finally getting clarification and getting to a point of understanding of who was more righteous. Where she kept on giving it to them and they didn't deserve it. And then all of a sudden, she finally gets to several points, and I'm trying to work and heal all these wounds, and then it flips on me. And you fucking open up the wounds and tear out my fucking heart again. Talk about fucking evil pieces of shit. If you did that, and all I went through, unfucking believable pain and suffering, and then you're going to rip my fucking heart out again? And it doesn't make sense to you why God would say, if you do this to me again, he's going to slaughter you. To me, that statement makes perfect sense to me. And it was said in 15 when I had another record year, and 16 was supposed to be an incredible breakout, which it started. I was number 1 in all of John Hancock. Number fucking 1. I was going to put all those people to shame. And then something happened, and even David recognized it. He's like, it should have been our breakout and many others. You should be just piling it in. What the fuck happened? That's what I want to know. I even had people call me in early 16 and tell me, you should be crushing it. The shit you're doing is so amazing that it puts me to shame. And I'm crushing it. And you're putting me to shame. So I just want to let you know that you're incredible. And what you're doing is blowing me a fucking way. So you should be crushing it. And that's my frustration. Because where I should be and where I am doesn't add up. Because it seems like everybody's so fucking selfish that they will destroy me to enrich themselves and make it out as they're the ones doing all the righteousness. So again, and I didn't ask them to collaborate with me, each to their own. And yes, I like tweaking ideas when I see them and so on. Truly, I don't mind helping people out, but I don't expect to get slaughtered for my goodwill. Why would you hurt me when I give you immensely goodwill? Like this fucking Starbucks. The two white trash older fucking men terrorizing me. It's unbelievable. So you're going to sell out to some pieces of fucking shit like all those charities, and all I did for them, and they wouldn't help me, they gave to everybody else. How the fuck is that? That you give to these fucking deadbeats that never donated $1, that never did anything for you, and you will prioritize them over me. And they come in need, and I did all this since childhood for all these charities, giving, volunteering, and everything else. And then all of a sudden, you push them to the front of the fucking line. And they did fucking nothing for you. And you allow them to be prioritized. And that's what happened during the first breakdown. And I was just fucking floored. It was like the government. They somehow prioritized them and put me to the back of the line. And all I sent to them, every department from the FDA to the USDA to the president to you name it. And then all of a sudden, they push them to the front of the line who have done nothing for this fucking country. I wrote to the Association of Governors and Mayors and boards and county boards and you name it, president, and I wrote to and somehow you push the people that have done fucking nothing for you to the head of the line. And say like George Clooney, and he did certain things for Sub-Sahara. That was his big thing, in Africa. And somehow somebody else who's never done anything, and they're going to give him George Clooney status. Why do they think they give him honorary citizenship? Which he deserves for his work in Darfur and that. Trying to help those people out. And they can give him not a citizenship, but they can make him an honorary citizen. What did Grace say to me? She said, Michael, you're an honorary yellow person. So I consider you Asian as much as I'm Asian. Even if you're white, you deserve to be an honorary yellow person. And so I see you as I see myself. That's Grace Sung. You deserve this honorary award. We recognize you as an Asian. And that was very, wonderful. That's what Tracy said to me secondly, that you should be an honorary black person. But again, they saw a little bit of what I did for the community. Grace didn't know I was with CanWin and many other things. The stuff that I did for Asian families from my childhood. She didn't know any of that. She just saw my current acts for Asians. And I believed that I deserved to be considered an honorary. That they would recognize me as an equal. So again, it makes a big difference. And I guess I'll go into Dunkin' Donuts. But the whole point is when you're doing this, and like on organ donations and that, and you're on that liver transfer list or whatever, well, one way to get greater points is to help the organization. As I told my nieces and my nephew Larry and his wife, Julie, that they should give back to the Ronald McDonald Association. Not Lori's children, because they paid them $1.5 million. They're good there. But they stayed at the Ronald McDonald House for free. And I told them that they should do something for the Ronald McDonald House, is help volunteering for them, helping them raise funds or do some other types of volunteering, like offer free massages at the Ronald McDonald Home. Truly, like soldier, get the chair, the massage chair, so you don't have to do full, and you can give neck massages or that at the, for the people staying at the Ronald McDonald Home, the families that have the child with, that feels stress, and you can de-stress them. And Larry can do other things for them, volunteer to work at the Ronald McDonald Home or raise funds or do something else. But I told them they should give back to the Ronald McDonald Home. They did for you, so you need to do for them. So in your time of need, they were there for you. So pay it forward. And do some good graces to that organization as that organization did for you. So charitable in that should realize that I spent time being a missionary, and I gave to the missionary field. Truly, I gave to Kaylee, who was a doctor who went on missions. I gave as much as I could, but I supported missionaries with also prayer when I didn't have any money. I fasted half-day fasts in honor of the missionaries. So when I couldn't give physically money, I gave through prayer and fasting. So I suffered for them, and I did. So I suffered for the missionaries. I gave to the missionaries. So again, it is a thing that I believe in reciprocity. So when you give good, you should receive good. And so there's a natural reciprocity. So I expect to give back. So in a just universe, what you put out there should come back to you. My protection against the universe, my protection of space and wanting to clean it up and everything else makes me a very goodwill ambassador for NASA and the space programs. Wanting to do right by them, wanting to do right by space, wanting to do right by the moon and Mars and the universe, our solar system, wanting to do right. So, again, putting out, you should receive back. So, people shaking legs and terrorizing me, that isn't giving back. That's slaughtering me. So, I'll leave this video.